Morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. You are listening to the new WCEG network on WCEGtalkradio.com, or you can watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG network. I'm your host, Attorney Melaney LaGrone, and I have today with me my guest, Attorney Bianca Jordan. And for the next hour, we're the worldwide community empowerment zone where we speak all things immigration. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG Talk Radio and WCEG Network. And just remember, the topics and opinions are those of the show hosts and guests and not WCEG Network. And thank you for your continued support. So good morning, Bianca. I'm so glad to have you on this morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you so much for thinking of inviting me to this. I'm so excited.
Oh, yay. No worries. Of course. So what I want you to do first is I'd like for you to introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, and how they can reach you and all that good stuff. And then we'll get started.
Sure. So I'm Bianca Jordan. I'm an immigration attorney at Brazen Legal, which is an immigration law firm based in Massachusetts. However, I help people all over the world who are trying to live and work in the United States. I primarily handle family and humanitarian-based immigration, primarily in the world of green cards. So I help people that are married get green cards, family members get green cards, particularly people who have deportation issues. And then I also help people get green cards through humanitarian programs. And I also help people get temporary protected status as well.
Awesome. And I'm so excited to have you on because one of the main things I wanted to talk about today is humanitarian parole, because there's some new countries that are able to get humanitarian parole. So why don't we tell the viewers what exactly is humanitarian parole, who can get it, how you can get it, and which countries are able to get it?
Sure. So humanitarian parole is just an immigration benefit that allows people to come into the United States for a temporary period of time. If you have humanitarian parole, you can get it for a period of a year or 2 years, and you have the possibility of being able to renew it as well. And while you have humanitarian parole, you're able to apply for a work permit, which also lets you get a Social Security number. Humanitarian parole, though, isn't something that's only designated to certain countries. So it's interesting that this administration is kind of doing that. Like we see that this week it announced that Ukrainians have humanitarian parole. And when I started to read about that, I was thinking it's just humanitarian parole, which anyone can apply for. It's not just country specific, but the branding towards this particular group of people is interesting to say the least. But humanitarian parole is something that you usually get if you come to the border. So for example, let's say you're fleeing your home country and you're in danger, so you didn't have time to go through the proper channels of getting a visa. So you maybe present yourself at the border and you say, I'm fleeing my country, I want to apply for asylum, for example. You could be granted humanitarian parole, which then allows you to enter the United States legally versus if you came to the border with no papers and you're coming in with illegally.
Okay, gotcha. Little bit of side stuff going on outside, so everyone has to excuse the extra noise. Someone is outside mowing the lawn. So, but I guess my question is also too, so with humanitarian parole, what is the difference between asylum? So if I come to the border, am I saying that I'm seeking humanitarian parole, or do I say that I'm seeking asylum? And then once I get here, I can apply for humanitarian parole? How does that work?
So usually, at least in the case of my clients, they don't come in asking for humanitarian parole. They just come in, they're fleeing their home country. They're coming in asking for asylum. And the difference between asylum and humanitarian parole is asylum is an actual immigration benefit that can lead to a green card. It's an immigration benefit for people who fear persecution or were tortured or persecuted before, and they are coming to America to seek protection because they've been persecuted on account of their race, nationality, membership in a particular social group, religion, or political opinion. So when you come to the border, if you're fleeing for your life, you're not in that moment caring about whether or not you're going to enter the country legally. And it's not required that you go to a country legally to seek for asylum. The fact that you're there asking for asylum is 100% legal under both our laws as well as international laws. But when you're coming here without documentation, if you express that desire to apply for asylum based on one of these humanitarian reasons, then you're often granted something called humanitarian parole, and that allows you to enter the United States temporarily, legally, and then you can apply for asylum at that time. So humanitarian parole isn't something that necessarily leads to anything like a green card or even asylum. It's just a vehicle that gets you in the country legally, and now that you're in America, you're able to apply for asylum.
All right, so that makes a lot of sense. And what's interesting that you brought up, and I definitely was gonna talk about, is the marketing or the branding that all of a sudden, Ukrainians have humanitarian parole options. And just like you said, anybody can seek humanitarian parole, right? It's not country specific. So what are your thoughts on that?
How much time do we have? Because I have a lot of thoughts on that. It's interesting, like Ukrainians have an awesome PR person right now, because it's like there's this new humanitarian parole for Ukrainians. And I'm like, but when the Haitians came here in Del Rio, Texas, I did a ton of pro bono work helping Haitians that were living under the bridge in Texas apply for humanitarian parole as well. Afghan refugees are also able to apply for humanitarian parole, although they also had like a little bit of a spin branding as well, that a lot of other immigrant groups don't get, like Haitians. But humanitarian parole is not country specific. You can apply for it at any time, and you don't even really need to be in the United States to apply for humanitarian parole. You can apply for it outside of the United States. So this whole like branding of, like Ukrainians get to apply for humanitarian parole and people can sponsor them, that's just regular humanitarian parole. In order to apply, you need to have someone who's either a US citizen or a green card holder to petition for you, because financially you're not going to be able to work. You're not able to work in the country unless you have a work permit, and it's going to take some time for you to get that work permit. So in the meantime, in between time, you need somebody who can sponsor you so that you're able to apply for humanitarian parole, which, by the way, is very difficult to get. So I also don't want people thinking that because there's this new humanitarian parole for Ukrainians or Afghans, or even if they decided to brand it for Haitians tomorrow, it doesn't mean it's not, the government's not giving you like, a get out of jail free card. Like, it's not like an Oprah, you get parole, everybody gets parole. Like, that's not how this happens. You still have to meet those qualifications. But for those people that do qualify and they want to apply for humanitarian parole, it's definitely worth it, because as I mentioned earlier, you're able to apply for a work permit, which also enables you to apply for a social security card, which will then enable you to get a job in America while you're here.
Awesome. Yeah, we could talk about that all day, all night. And that actually leads me into TPS. Because last month when we were on, Attorney Audra Doyle and I, we were talking about the different TPS countries and how long the designation is going to be and things like that. And she brought up a really good point. It's interesting right now how Ukraine and Afghanistan got TPS. And just now, Cameroonians got TPS. But when we look at everything that's been going on in different countries, who needs TPS, first? Who should have got it first? It blew our minds that it was just so fast that Ukrainians and Afghanistans were able to get TPS, and other countries are basically in an uproar and still waiting. What are your thoughts on that?
Ukraine got TPS in 5 days. I don't know that any other country's gotten TPS that quickly. I was trying to think back, just because, like I'm Haitian American, so sometimes I can be biased. And I'm trying to think back if to January 2010, when Haiti first got TPS. I think that was pretty quick too. I don't know if it was 5 days quick, but it's like the earthquake happened on the 10th or 12th of January. And definitely by the end of the month, they had been granted TPS, but I don't know if it was like 5 days quick. But Ukrainians got TPS in like 5 days flat. Meanwhile, countries like Cameroon that have also been dealing with armed conflict forever, for years, who have really needed it, like it's kind of like, it almost seems like as an afterthought, it was like, okay, let's give Cameroon TPS as well. Afghanistan, like, hello, like they should have had TPS forever ago. So it's interesting to see what countries get preferential treatment, in a way, for lack of a better word. It really is seeming like preferential treatment. Like, do Ukrainians deserve help and protection while they're here? Absolutely. They definitely do. But it's literally black and white what we're seeing as far as the treatment of certain immigrants versus others. Even when we're thinking about Title 42, Title 42 applies to, it's supposed to apply to immigrants across the board. Like, if you've lived in a country where they have reason to believe that like COVID was high or whatever, which they're coming into a country where COVID was high, but conversation for another day. But we saw a couple of months ago, there was actually a memo drafted that exempted Ukrainians from Title 42. Meanwhile, we saw tens of thousands of Haitians immediately expelled back to Haiti under Title 42 when they came here in September. So in a way, I'm actually happy that this is happening now, so that people can see the biases that we're dealing with in immigration law. And hopefully people will see that that's not okay and work to change that.
You brought up a really good point, and that is so very true, that there are so many biases in immigration law. It's always such an uphill battle for us. It doesn't, it never makes any sense. And it always seems like the minorities, the underdogs are always the one that are getting back into the stick, basically. It's like we just always are dealing with something. And you made a really good point, because TPS, there are so many other places that have conflict going on and everything. And even with Haiti and everything that's going on with Haiti, and I know you said, hey, I'm a Haitian American, so I might have a few biases, but at the end of the day, it all makes sense. If people look at it and see the comparison, it's just not fair. And unfortunately, that's the world that we're living in. We're hoping that eventually it gets to be more on an even playing field. But immigration is just one of those type of laws that who knows? Basically, it's almost like no matter what president we have in office, it's still, kind of thing. You mentioned Title 42. So let's talk a little bit about that. So for anyone that doesn't actually know what Title 42 is, Title 42 was a policy or a law that Trump put into place. And basically it was to limit the migrants coming to the border. Everyone knows his views on immigrants. Everyone knows his views on, anyone being in America, if you're not a European American per se, but we won't get into all of that. But, and so with that said, it limited all of the migrants that wanted to come to the US, even claiming asylum. It was like, nah, you can't do that, basically. Now, when I was listening to something the other day, which was very interesting, because I know someone had brought up before about how you're coming into the country and you're not being vaccinated, but yet our immigrants that are seeking green cards here in the country, one of the requirements is that you have to be vaccinated. And so there was this big, huge dilemma about that. And I read somewhere that actually they're starting to vaccinate people at the border. What are your thoughts on that in Title 42? Did you see that? Did you?
I didn't know that they were starting to vaccinate people at the border. I don't really know how I feel about that. And mind you, like, I'm pro-vaccine, but I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about the fact that they're vaccinating people to come into America. I don't really like Title 42 because it's not backed by science. It doesn't make sense that you're saying that you don't want immigrants to come here so that they don't spread COVID, which is the underlying message, is that immigrants are dirty and they're going to come in and infect us all. Meanwhile, like we are one of the countries that handled COVID the worst. So it wasn't because of immigrants that we got COVID and over 1 million people died, but different conversation for another day. But it didn't really accomplish what it was supposed to accomplish. It didn't deter immigration. Immigrants are going to come here no matter what. So it just didn't work. It was really just a way to get the goal across, which is pretty much like, we don't want Black and brown immigrants here. That's pretty much what it was, under the guise of, but COVID. And no, I'm glad that it's going away, hopefully, although it seems like the Biden administration is wavering on whether it does want to end Title 42 next month, because they think that it's going to cause an influx. But if we think about historically, like if we think about pre-COVID, we had a lot of unaccompanied minors coming to the border that had nothing to do with COVID. When we were throwing babies in cages, they were coming. We didn't have COVID at that time. So Title 42 it wasn't achieving whatever goal people thought it was going to. And I think getting rid of it isn't going to all of a sudden make more people want to come here. People are coming here anyway. But even pre-Trump, a lot of the migration totals were actually going down. A lot less people were coming. So I'm hopeful that they're going to get rid of Title 42, fingers crossed, but it doesn't solve, getting rid of Title 42 or keeping it doesn't solve the fact that our immigration laws are super antiquated and we need Congress to just do their job and fix it.
Absolutely. Yes, that is it right there. and I always tell all of my immigrant clients, like, once you get your green card, become a citizen, stop waiting, because you can help change these laws. Like, you can vote, you can have a say in Congress, you can go run for office. And I think that's the only way that we're going to show, basically like the world that, immigrants mean just as much as we do, is if they start even, deciding to do things like run for political office and Congress and everything like that to help change these antiquated laws. It's like, yeah, antiquated. It's like, how long have these same laws been in effect? I mean, and then what makes it even harder, obviously, for us is the back and forth. So, today, it'll say, yeah, we can do X, Y, and Z. And then tomorrow it'll be like, oh yeah, no, you can't do X, Y, and Z. You got to do A, B, and C. It's like nuts. So with Title 42, well, let's go back to the COVID vaccine. So how I want to take this is this way. So with Title 42, everyone is coming in, or they're saying that it's all of a sudden this big influx. Okay. But the reason why you can do that is because America has always set itself up as being that saving grace, okay, type of country. I mean, look at us, entering into this whole situation with Ukraine and Russia and all of that. So it's almost like, why do we put ourselves in that type of conflict, and we want to help out, countries like that and stuff like that? Not saying it's wrong, but we can't help out, people that are coming from Mexico because of the conditions and everything that's wrong, everything that's going on in all of these, other countries, Haiti, Nigeria, whatever it might be. What is the problem of them coming here for us to help them, just like we go and, put ourselves in the middle of war issues and help other countries? What are your thoughts on that?
America to me is like, it's kind of like, that you need to you have work to do that you need to get done, but you're kind of like distracted by, there's social media, all these TikTok videos. I feel like America is like, instead of focusing on fixing its own issues, it's kind of like, let me distract myself with what's going on over here. Let me go mind somebody else's business. Let me go into this country and do all of it. Yeah. America suffers from shiny object syndrome, and except that its shiny object syndrome actually hurts other countries. Like, look at what, with the war with Afghanistan, look at what that did, all the devastation that happened almost for nothing in a way. So many people lost their lives. And in the end, look what happened. At one point in history, America occupied Haiti. And a lot of that, Haiti is still suffering from the remnants of a lot of the US's occupation, although it was short, but we're still suffering from that. So America has a tendency of wanting to be, Captain Save all the countries. And then when things go wrong, it's like, oops, my bad. And then it leaves. And then when those people want to come here to seek refuge because you just messed up their country, we're like, nope, you can't come in. And it's not fair. And it's not right. And I think that America, I'm very ignorant to all of what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. I don't agree with what's happening to Ukrainians, and I definitely feel for them. And I think that if we're able to help them, we definitely should. But I also feel like we need to stop meddling where we don't necessarily need to be, because at the end of the day, American citizens are paying for it. We gave $1.6 billion to Ukraine. I think this week we announced another $800 million. Where's that money coming from? Who's being helped by that? Who's paying for this pretty much? And why is it that we can give all this money to countries like Ukraine? We can send people to Afghanistan. We can send people all of the places, but then how do we pick and choose who we're helping? So that's like the $1 million question. Why do we feel the need to constantly try to save all of the countries when we've got a lot of issues over here on our own, starting with our immigration laws that we could be tending to?
Absolutely. And just like you said, where's all this money coming from? And could we take that money and put it into fixing our immigration laws and our immigration system and things like that? Absolutely. And I love what you said. It's like, how do we pick and choose? You know what I'm saying? It's just this arbitrary, oh yeah, I'm going to go over here and we're going to help this country out, but what about this country that needs help? So I want to talk a little bit about Haiti, because I know that's, near and dear, obviously, to your heart. What is going on right now? How are they? Is it in any sort of rebuilding mode? What's happening right now?
So Haiti is complicated because it depends on where in Haiti. So for example, just to kind of for those who don't know, Haiti was recently redesignated for temporary protected status back in 2021, first in May of 2021, and then Haiti's president was assassinated in July, and then they kind of moved the date back. So Haitians who are living in America as of July 29th, 2021 are able to apply for temporary protected status due to everything going on there, which is the assassination of their president, Jovenel Moise. And there's not really much happening with that investigation there in that regard. There's a lot of gang activity where the police and the government really isn't in a position where they're able to protect the people of Haiti. The weird thing, though, is that for the beginning of time, when we've heard about Haiti, people always think of Haiti as this dangerous place. Do not go there. Haiti is dirty, all of the things. Because when you go to Haiti, more likely than not, you have to go through the capital to get to anywhere else. The rest of Haiti is fine functioning, and people travel there. People go on cruises there still. People vacation there all the time. But because of what's happening in the capital, people write off the entire country. To say that you should not go to Haiti because it's dangerous is to say that you shouldn't come to the United States because Rhode Island is on and popping. It doesn't make any sense. And that's kind of the analogy I give, because Haiti is such a small country, and because of what's going on in the capital, even though it's not going on in the countryside, but because of what's going on in the capital, people completely write off the country. And it's always people that have never stepped foot in Haiti that always have the worst things to say about Haiti. I love traveling to Haiti. I haven't been able to travel there for a couple of years, just really because of my work schedule and whatnot. But every time I go to Haiti, I feel like it's a reset for me. I love going to the beaches. The same Caribbean Sea that you find in Jamaica or its neighbor, Dominican Republic, is the same Caribbean Sea that Haiti has. But because of people's misunderstanding of what's going on in Haiti, they kind of just write off the whole entire country because of what's happening in the capital, and it's not really fair. But for Haitians, they're trying to rebuild, but it's every time they try, something else happens. Even with So the president was assassinated in July, and then a month later, there was like a massive earthquake that hit part of Haiti, because Haiti is unfortunately on a major fault line. So every now and then they will get earthquakes. So it's kind of like we'll take a couple steps forward and we got to like take 10 feet back. So it's very much in flux and everything. But even despite all of that, like just the endurance and, just the pride that people have, no matter what's happening to them, Haitian people will always, kind of be like, well, tomorrow's another day. And they just always have that determination to persevere no matter what.
And that's what I love. And I think we miss, I think, the mark on that a little bit in America. Because I remember I went on a mission trip to Jamaica. And so we're not talking about going to, Montego Bay where, we're living it up. We're talking about going way up into, the mountaintops where, families all live, here's one house, here's a house, here's a house, here's a house, and everyone lives basically on the same property. And one thing that I found was that there is so much like just pride and just so much love for their country, for their situation, all that kind of stuff. And they might not have running water, or they might not have a grocery store to go to because of whatever happened and things like that. But there was so much like just love and pride. And I think here it's almost like we miss a little bit of that, because I think we are kind of, and I don't want to, and I'm not, come on, y'all, I'm not dogging America, obviously, because this is my home and this is where I love and everything like that. But we're a little spoiled, you know what I'm saying? Like we're a little bit entitled, like, we don't think of things like, if, tomorrow maybe, what I'm saying, if something happened to us, or, what will we do? And I just love seeing that pride in other countries. Like that mission trip, it just kind of changed my whole view, of people pretty much.
Absolutely. And I would take it a step further and say we're very much spoiled, not just a little bit. Like we're very much spoiled in America. I mean, I think most people can relate. Like I grew up with, an immigrant mom who always liked to remind me I had one notebook for the whole school year. And when I ran out of pages, I had to write in the border, or I had one pencil for the whole school year. And we didn't have electricity. We had to go outside when the light was on to do, our homework and whatever, have to walk like 15 miles to school. My dad is always like, I feel like he's always exaggerating. Like he had to like walk all these miles to school. But we've heard those stories of the things that our parents had to, deal with to come here, and then to go through their journey to come here so that we can have a better life. So I think that, immigrants everywhere, like if immigrants are able to make it to America, they will hit the ground running, because they're not going to let a little something like, things that we cry over that's like really nothing, they're not going to let that hamper their desire to keep moving forward. And that's why it's so important for immigrants to be able to come here and live and work, because they contribute so much here. The immigrant mentality of no matter what, I'll figure it out, I'll work hard, and we'll just make it happen, is why we need more immigrants here. Even right now we have like an employment crisis, which is weird because on the one hand, unemployment is at a record low since like for decades, I think since like the 80s or something ridiculous. But at the same time, a lot of employers are finding it hard to find Americans to work. And I'm like, oh, I got clients that would want to work if USCIS would just give them their work permit. If we could just kind of remove those bureaucracies and red tape to getting immigrants work permits, they could contribute to our economy. When they're working, they get a social, they're paying taxes, they're paying into Medicare and Social Security, things that they may never even benefit from unless they're able to at least get a green card. So it's very important for us to realize that immigrants are such an important part of our country's existence. If we, when they were trying to get rid of TPS and DACA for all these countries, if that had happened, I think we would have done way worse during the pandemic, because a lot of people with DACA and TPS were on the front lines during COVID. So whether we like it or not, we need immigrants here. We need their passion. We need their drive and determination that will hopefully rub off on us a little bit more. And we just need a better system to enable them to come in here.
Oh, you brought up a fabulous point. Like the work ethic is ridiculous. And just like you said, if they're dealing with what they're dealing with over there and they come here, it's like there's no crying, whining, anything like that. Like they're going to make it work and make it, I mean, just explode and make an opportunity where they didn't have one. Um, and like the working, like you're saying, the work ethic, people always have this misconception, oh, immigrants are taken away from, us, our American jobs, and they're making it so that we don't have any jobs or employment or things like that. But I know so many people, like friends and family, that have businesses and can't find anybody to work for them, you know what I'm saying, or wants to do some shoddy work or things like that. Versus you see immigrants over here busting their butt all the time. And it's just amazing how people think, oh, they're trying to take the jobs. No, they're actually doing what you don't want to do.
Yeah, my clients make me feel lazy all the time, especially when I'm helping them study for their naturalization test. I don't know half the answer. I was born here. I was born in Texas, and I don't know, like, and the questions like, why do states, or how many senators are per state? I don't know. Like, I don't know these questions, and I was born here. So like, some of my clients always make me feel stupid. And then some of my clients always make me feel so lazy. Like I could be like, oh my God, I got a tire. I got a nail in my tire. And my client will be like, well, I don't even have a car. And I actually walked to your office from, Boston to what I took like 3 buses to get to your office to meet with you today. And I'm like, okay, let me shut up now. But like the work ethic that they have, and and the other thing too, the common misconception that I hate, that I always try to change this narrative. A lot of people have this common misconception that all immigrants are poor, dirty, lazy, uneducated. And meanwhile, a lot of our clients are like wealthier than we'll ever be because they have businesses back home. Some of them are like doctors and engineers back home, but they can't just come here and start operating on people. Or, they could be like a neurosurgeon back home, but they can't just like walk into the United States and start operating on people because of licensure. They could be a lawyer somewhere else, but they need to pass the bar in America in order to practice. These are not uneducated people. These are people that have skills. These are people that can really contribute to our economy if we would allow them the opportunity to do so. So much of what we have today is because of immigrants. Like all of us are on like $1,000 iPhones and iPads, and we use Google and we have Tesla because of immigrants, so I need people to stop with this. Immigrants are, poor, lazy, taking from us. If anything, they're giving so much to us.
Amen to that one. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Because we have so much. I mean, come on, stuff like Tesla, electronic cars and things like that. Does anybody really know who made all of these things or who came up with the ideas and stuff like that? Immigrants are very, very, very smart, very knowledgeable, and they take pride in every single thing that they do. And why not have them here, to teach us, some of the things that I think that, sometimes we're lacking. So definitely, definitely, definitely. And everyone, this is why we have shows like this. This is why you have immigration attorneys. We are on the front line all the time. We really believe that this world is a melting pot. It is made up of so many different people, and they can contribute so much to us, and we can contribute so much to them, that if everyone would just realize that immigrants are all humans, just like we're all humans, there's no, illegal and all that kind of stuff. When we always say that, or when you hear people say that, no, that just means that somebody doesn't have papers. It doesn't mean they're illegal. Because you know what, when I think of legal and illegal, especially with me doing, some criminal law as well, that's what I think of. I think of criminals, I think of crimes and things like that. And that's not what we mean, when that is said. So everyone needs to change their verbiage on that as well. Undocumented is the proper term. So Bianca, anything else that you want to talk about? We got about 15 more minutes. What's on your mind? Where are you? In what state are you working in? And what do you see a lot of?
So I'm in Massachusetts. I actually just got back from Orlando. So like I feel very, I just got back like off a plane not too long ago. So I feel like I can't really hear out of my right ear because I'm still waiting for it to pop after being on the plane. I sound nasally, so I'm a mess right now. But I am based in Massachusetts, but I help people all over the world. As long as you've got a US based immigration case, then I can help you with that. Most of my cases are marriage-based green cards for newlyweds who I like to say that I'm like the Jerry Springer of immigration and I don't know if that's aging myself or dating myself, but my cases are what immigration would consider to be a hot mess. My cases are situations like someone's married to someone getting a green card through them, but they're having somebody else's kid. Or maybe they've tried to apply for a green card on their own a couple times, it's been denied. And even though there's nothing wrong with their marriage, now immigration thinks there's marriage fraud because of all the denials and what's going on and things like that. Or if there's cases where there's a large age difference between the spouse and the petitioner, or cases where my clients just don't have any joint assets. A lot of my clients don't have any joint assets together, and it could be because maybe they came in on a visitor's visa and you can't work on a visitor's visa, which means you can't get a social security card or a work permit. And the IRS hasn't been allowing a lot of immigrants to just apply for a tax ID number over the past couple of years. So I end up getting a lot of clients who are here, whether, maybe they came in on an F1 visa and they weren't able to get OPT or anything that would allow them to work. So now, because they don't have a social security number or a tax ID, they can't get a joint bank account. They can't get their taxes done together. So I help my clients kind of navigate that where they don't have all of the nice to haves, but we can still make that work. And maybe their marriage is a little bit messy because whose isn't, but just because your marriage isn't, a Disney fairy tale doesn't mean you don't deserve your happy ending as well. So I take cases that are super challenging. I have a lot of cases that are in removal proceedings. So people that maybe it's somebody who applied for asylum, got a removal order, never left the country. Now they have TPS and they qualify for a green card, helping them navigate that because over the past couple of years, TPS has also gotten to be very, very messy between the Supreme Court decision last June and all of these changes with whether or not you can adjust if you have advanced parole or not. So there's been a lot in that world. And so for my cases, TPS and green cards overlap a lot with a side of them being in removal proceedings as well.
Nice, nice, nice. Yes, and that is one thing about newlyweds. That was a really good point that you can just get married and ready to, apply for your green card because that's when you should apply. But it doesn't mean that your marriage is, fraudulent, or it doesn't mean that you don't love each other or anything like that. So it is a lot of hoops that we have to jump through with USCIS. And that's a great niche to have because you have so many, people that are falling in love and just want to, like you said, have their happily ever after. We had a caller that was listening in and they made a really good point. They said that we are all immigrants, and that is true. We are all immigrants because none of us, we're here in this world. So
right, unless you're a Native American, like you're an immigrant, you're here, and you should be at the very least treated with respect. Like even though, and again, I want people to understand that like seeking asylum is legal. Like you're not breaking the law. Every country, I think almost every country under our international laws, you have a right to go to another country to seek asylum. That's all that a lot of these immigrants are doing to come here. They're coming here to seek asylum. And, they should be treated with respect at a bare minimum. And that respect should be universal, regardless of the color of your skin. I find that to talk about things that I find that my Black and Brown immigrants have steeper hurdles to cross over than my clients who are a little less melanated. And I think that as we So I was a speaker on a panel yesterday for AILA in Orlando, and my co-panelists were also Black women immigration attorneys. And I think this was the first time that they've ever had an all Black women panel at the conference, which was awesome. So you know that we studied a little bit. And I think that it's important for people to see more people that look like us, and for people that look like us to also have people that are fighting the good fight for them. Because the truth of the matter is the people that are making the policies that impact all immigrants don't always look like us, and they might not be able to understand why, you know, a Black or brown immigrant is coming to America, but they'll be able to understand why like a white immigrant is fleeing their home country because of war. So the more people that we have that look like us, that are helping immigrants becoming, you know, and helping immigrants, once the immigrants are able to become citizens, and like you said, they can vote, they can run for office, they can be part of that change that we need to see in immigration policy, because now they're not only going to be represented at the table, but they also can, you know, build their own tables and build their own policies to make sure that all immigrants are being helped.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you had mentioned so about asylum, and I'm just curious because I'm in Georgia, okay? And I think every immigration attorney knows that they don't want their client to come to Georgia and seek asylum. We have about a 2% approval rate for asylum cases. And that's crazy, because that means that immigration judges are thinking that asylum's not warranted. Okay, because obviously, you know, you have to go through, you know, requirements and, you know, credible fear interview and things like that, you know, but once you pass your credible fear interview saying that you fear going back, you are allowed to file a petition for asylum. And then of course, like everything else, you know, we have to, you know, get evidence and things like that, you know, write some good, you know, to motions and everything, but 2%, girl, 2%. And it's like, that is ridiculous, because it's making everyone think that asylum is not a real thing here. Where you are, what's usually about your percentage rate approval for asylum cases?
I think Boston right now is at like 11%, so not much better. You know, and the national average, I forget, I recently read like statistics on the national average, it might be like in the low 20%. So it's very difficult to get asylum. It's even harder to get asylum if you don't have an attorney. But those of you in Georgia, like y'all are the real MVP. If you're able to win an asylum, not even just asylum, if you're able to win an immigration court case in Georgia, like I feel like kudos to you, because like that just means you're a super lawyer, because it's hard down there. And I also have a problem with that, because geography should not dictate the outcome of, or the probability of a positive outcome in your case. There are cases that I could win with my eyes closed, hands tied behind my back in Boston, that I will not win in Georgia. And it shouldn't be that way, because we don't allow people to forum shop. We don't allow people to say, okay, well, let me just try to transfer my case to Boston or California. If you're in Georgia, you're kind of stuck in Georgia. But you already have so many hurdles to cross, because you're in a place where they're not really here to hear about your case at all. And that's not fair. That's not justice.
It is definitely the South. It is the South with a lot of different type of cases, y'all, not even just immigration. So, but yeah, I just tell people, you know, hey, I love you. I really want you to get this asylum case approved. But sometimes I'm just like, I don't know if we can do it, but let's try. Because that's the best thing that we can do for our clients is we just try our darndest and see how it works. So, all right, so we are going to be wrapping up. Bianca, please tell the audience how they can find you, telephone number, email address, website, social media. You guys, this is the social media queen, okay? Let me tell you what, all right? She's had me stepping up my game for social media. So go seek her out on social media.
I've definitely been watching your videos. I do see that you've been posting more. I love it. Like, so I built my whole law firm on social media, and that was kind of a fluke. So when I passed the bar, at the time that I passed the bar, the economy was still reeling from the Great Recession and a lot of people still weren't hiring. And so I applied to over 500 jobs, and it was like these jobs had Goldilocks syndrome. It was either I was too qualified because I had an MBA and I just passed the bar, or I didn't have enough experience as an attorney yet because I literally just passed the bar. So after 500 plus jobs, nobody wanted to hire me. So I hired myself, and I started my law firm virtually because I had run out of money. I was actually temporarily homeless for a little while. I could barely afford my law license. So I clearly had no business trying to go pay for anybody's office space. And a lot of lawyers would give me flack about it. They're like, are you even a real lawyer? What do you mean you don't have an office? What do you mean you don't have a secretary? I'm not going to refer anybody to you. So I turned to social media for my marketing. And at the time it worked because the cases that I was taking at first were a lot of VAWA cases. And I found that my clients didn't want to come meet with me in person because they're afraid that their abuser would find out. And at the time, Instagram didn't have all the search functions and all the data and analytics. So I would post things and people wouldn't be able to tell, like nobody would really be able to tell that so-and-so looked at this post or whatever. So they were still getting the information that they needed about VAWA and how to help themselves. And I got a lot of clients through that. And then over time, I just had a lot of clients in different states. There were a lot of Haitian people who maybe didn't speak English well that needed an attorney that spoke Creole. So I was able to help them just by being here. And then I started doing video more. And then during COVID, my business actually like blew up because now you can't meet with people in person. So people were like, well, I still need an immigration lawyer, but I'm not comfortable meeting in person, or I can't meet with you in person. And I was like, that's fine. I bring the law to you. I've been virtual since 2014. So something that I used to think was a weakness because other lawyers didn't get it, or they thought that I was less than because I didn't have like the fancy office with all the brass and all the awards on it, actually ended up helping me, I guess, crush my competition of the people that were like, no, we need office space. So something that it was like a happy accident. And to that end, I still use social media to meet with people where they are. I love to share culturally relevant information because I find that a lot of the content that people are sharing in the immigration space doesn't necessarily speak to my clients who are mostly from the Caribbean. So I kind of like to spice it up a little bit. I'm always throwing hip hop in my content and things. So I just make it myself because that's all I know how to do. But I am on social media. I live on Instagram and TikTok when TikTok isn't banning me like they are right now. But I'm Brazen Lawyer on all social media. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can go to brazenlegal.com.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And everyone, I am Attorney Mel, or Attorney Melaney LaGrone. You can find me on TikTok at Attorney Mel. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at LaGrone Law. And then of course, you know, email, phone. Our phone number is 678-250-5449. And Bianca, why don't you or give them out your phone number? And if you have WhatsApp, give them WhatsApp.
Sure. So my phone number and WhatsApp is 508-942-7497.
Great, great, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today with me. This was absolutely awesome. And we will see everybody next month. I think my mute went out. Okay, Bianca, put your mute on. Yeah, or you put your mute off. So yes. We will see everybody next month, and we'll have another guest then. And once again, like I said, I'd love to thank my, my guest, Bianca Jordan from Brazen Legal, on being with us here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.